Work management platforms. Ugh, endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding. Beautiful reports in minutes. Custom workflows you can build on your own. Easy to use prompt-free AI. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
You don't need to love everything about you. You don't need to love all of the versions of yourself. You don't need to love all of the people that have hurt you in your past or anything like that. You don't need to love everything to accept everything. Acceptance is neutrality. So your worth has never been up for debate. You don't need to hustle to prove it. Self-acceptance is the way. You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 670. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. We're on lesson 9 of the Coming Home to Yourself series, and I have been loving making these for you as well as the feedback that you've been giving me. I'm running the Write Your Way Through It group journaling program, and which, by the way, I'm going to rerun in the fall. So I'll put that link in the show notes if you want to sign up to be notified of that. But I'm running that, and there's the handful of women in there that bring their topic based on whatever episode resonated with them the most from this series, and I give them prompts to journal around it. So thank you for your feedback. And you've been DMing me and emailing me, and some people have even been texting me, former clients. So I'm honored that you love it. This really has been a heart-centered project. And I don't love to use jargon like that, but it truly is. It came from my heart. It was an idea that was downloaded to me. And now I'm going to write a book based on these 10 life lessons. So thank you for sharing it with your friends and for giving me the feedback. It helps me so much. Couple of quick announcements. How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, the 8-week experience is coming, but I'm also going to do a free 5-day challenge. If you're not sure that you want to sign up for the group coaching program, I'm going to run a free challenge the last week in April, first week of May. So head on over to andreaowen.com/habits to be the first to be notified when I open registration for that. By the time this episode comes out, it might already be ready, but you know me. Sometimes I come in on 2 wheels with these things. And as usual, there's a worksheet for this particular episode. In the show notes, there's the link, or andreaowen.com/670. And also, I'm going to start sending out regular emails after my birthday, like late April, early May. I am going to send out a special birthday email. So if you're not on my email list, I promise I don't send a bunch of junk. Promise I won't sell your email. But if you head on over to show notes or andreaowen.com/free, that's where you can sign up to be notified of things that I send out, love notes to you, etc. All right, let's get into it. Today's lesson is radical self-acceptance, how to stop fixing yourself, and finally come home to who you are, because this series is called Coming Home to Yourself. All of these life lessons point to that same thing, point to when you start to hear your own voice again, when you start to, at the very least, want to remember who you are. These life lessons point to that. These are sort of general sweeping life lessons that will likely, for all of us, myself included, be long journeys. These aren't things that maybe that's a lie. I was going to say they aren't things that we really master. I think that we can get really good at them. But I have found with all of these lessons, they are things that we circle back to, kind of like a spiral staircase. I'm going to talk more about that next week in the last lesson, but just how that is how growth is generally. But there are some things that I talk about in my books and here on the podcast that are sort of quicker strategies to be able to master in your own personal development and growth. These lessons are more long-term. So radical self-acceptance, why does this matter so much? Why did I pick this as one of the 10 topics? I have found in my near 20 years coaching women, especially for women navigating midlife, not necessarily only for them, but especially for women navigating midlife and having identity shifts or even having emotional healing. Self-acceptance seems to be a theme, an undercurrent that runs as a pattern between women in those particular places. Again, if you are in midlife, if you are having an identity shift in kind of a transformational period or having some emotional healing that you're working on. What I'm talking about is the chasing self-improvement and still not feeling enough when you're kind of really going after it and then you still don't feel enough. Radical self-acceptance can be the thing to really look at and maybe to kind of back out and start from here. So hopefully this episode will help that. So if you're someone who thinks that the next thing is going to fix you or make you feel complete and you keep looking for it and you keep looking for it and you're not finding it, those are the people I really want to listen. I really want you to turn your ears on and listen to this. So I'm going to break this episode into 5 parts, 5 powerful parts, including the truth about why this is so hard, why this is something that we tend to keep circling back to over and over again in our evolution, in our personal growth evolution. I'm going to talk about how to reconnect with your inner child, because that's a big part of it. And I'm going to talk about learning to trust your body again, your physical vehicle, your body. All right, let's kick it off with part 1. I'm going to get some clarity. We're going to get some clarity on what the hell is radical self-acceptance anyway. I always want to be clear about these terms because they tend to be terms that are memeified, as I like to call them, and miniaturized. They sound really great on Pinterest, on a meme, on Instagram, but I think very few of us know what that actually is, or we make up a story about what it is. Like, does that mean I love myself unconditionally all the time? Is that body positivity? Is it healing from trauma? What is it? So I want to start by saying what it isn't. It's definitely not spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. It's not about you doing your best to focus just on changing your thoughts. It's not about pretending that things are okay or just ignoring the hard parts of your life. It's not that at all. I also want to make sure I'm clear that if we're talking about like radical self-love versus radical self-acceptance, I always think that self-acceptance needs to come first. It's the first step. You don't need to love everything about you. You don't need to love all of the versions of yourself. You don't need to love all of the people that have hurt you in your past or anything like that. You don't need to love everything to accept everything. Acceptance is neutrality. Acceptance is very different from having gratitude or quote unquote loving something. And the reason that I very much like to put the term radical in front of self-acceptance is because it's countercultural. We've been taught to be our own worst critic. I'm going to get into that in a little bit more in the next part. We have been taught to be our own worst critic. I was talking to a client last week. I was breaking some things down for her and kind of painting a picture about social conditioning and cultural conditioning and what that looks like. This is largely the topic of Make Some Noise, my 3rd book, and that as women and girls growing up, we've been conditioned to think a certain way, to act a certain way, to behave a certain way, to respond a certain way. And that was in order for us to kind of play by the rules, our culture and our society. And we learn from an early age more implicitly, sometimes explicitly, but more implicitly, these are the rules around here. If you do these things, if you put everyone before you, if you are selfless, if you make sure everyone else's needs are taken care of before your own, if you don't cause any scenes or rock any boats, don't tip over the apple cart, if you make sure that you don't cause any drama. If you are just the right amount of emotional, which isn't a whole lot, then you lessen your risk a lot of being ostracized by the group. You will be accepted by others when you do these things. So when people come to me and they're wanting to change their people-pleasing behaviors, or even things like, numbing out or perfectionism, and they're kind of beating themselves up for it, I call it the ultimate ass kicker. Like when you rip the covers off and you really start to take inventory of your behaviors and you're like, oh God, here I go again. This is terrible. And you might feel some shame about how you behave. And then you get excited about wanting to do better. I pause people and tell them like, hey, you've been playing by the rules that were given to you. You have been keeping yourself safe. And that's great. You did what you had to do. So beating yourself up for it is counterproductive. You have to kind of realize that and understand and accept that you were truly doing the best that you could and you were playing by the rules. Like, excellent, A+, you did it. And there comes a time, I take this from 12-step programs. There's a saying, it works until it doesn't. When I'm having this conversation with someone, that's what I tell them. Like, we're at that place. You're at that place. It worked for a while and now it doesn't. So I went on that little rant to make a point about that you have been taught to be your own worst critic. And you've been practicing that for probably decades. So this is no different than learning a new language. Absolutely not different at all. It is going to take getting super clear on what the new language looks like and sounds like, and then putting in the reps and sets in your real life. So this doesn't happen just when you're listening to a podcast or reading a book or taking a group coaching program or in therapy. That's where you're learning. And then when you go out into your real life and you encounter situations where you're met with, should I beat myself up in this moment? Or is there another option? Should I set a boundary in this moment or go back to my old behaviors? That's where you're doing the work of radical self-acceptance. That's the reps and sets. That's what that is. So that's why I call it radical. It is countercultural because you've been taught to be your own worst critic. You've been taught to have a completely different mind view about self-acceptance. So also, like, what the hell is radical self-acceptance? What does it look like? It's neutrality. It's not beating yourself up or feeling like a loser or whatever else, fill in the blank, not nice thing. And it's also not completely like leaning into amazing and beautiful self-love or, going all the way over into a spiritual realm of practicing tantra. Like that's amazing. And my hat is off to you if you go in that direction, but it starts with self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is absolutely the first step there. What that might sound like, the neutrality that I'm talking about, is statements like, this is me right now, and that's enough. I'm doing the best I can, and that's enough for now. It might sound like all past versions of me were doing their best. I was doing my best when I made that massive mistake. I was doing my best when I got myself into that pickle that I'm trying to get out of right now. It might sound like my shadows or my dark sides, the stories that I'm not super proud of, all of that matters too. Radical self-acceptance is also not about giving up on growth. It's not that at all. I think that's a misconception. Radical self-acceptance is growing from wholeness, from your whole ass self. It's not growing from a place, it's not just growing from a place of wounding. It's not growing only when things are great, because that's easy. It's looking at things and growing when things are hard, when things are just kind of smooth sailing, all of those things. All right, moving on. Part 2. Why radical self-acceptance is so damn hard. Even, I think for some people, I was this way. I'll get more into that in a minute, but that felt almost like embarrassing. Do you know what I mean? Like it felt really corny. And I believe that a lot of that has to do with cultural and generational messaging that we receive. As women, we receive messaging that says, be smaller, be quieter, be better. And it's very Western. It's very American. I know not all of you are listening here in the States, but I know even elsewhere, it's a cultural focus on forward trajectory, on metrics. I mean, even capitalism points to that. Capitalism does not point to like, yeah, wherever you are is good enough. No, it's about bigger, better, faster, productivity, netting positive all the time. And so that seeps into all areas of our life, even our personal growth and how we feel about ourselves. Another reason self-acceptance is so hard is because of internalized shame. This is a topic I will get on my soapbox about, so I will try to keep it brief, especially for women who've spent decades, not just years, decades, shape-shifting, caretaking, proving themselves, pleasing, perfecting, performing. You've essentially been wearing a mask, and to accept and then love all the parts of ourselves feels, for the sake of sounding dramatic, if I was going to write a poem about it, I would say like, it feels like peeling off my skin. Like, what do I do with my hands? I don't understand this. It feels so counterintuitive to what we've been taught. For me, part of why it felt so damn hard was because I thought for sure that if I did that, then I would stay stagnant. And that's another reason it's so damn hard. It's like we have this fear of becoming stagnant. There's a myth of self-acceptance that if we do that, then we will have no more ambition. And it's actually the opposite. I pushed back on self-acceptance for so long because that was one of the reasons. If I totally accept myself as I am, like, then I'm not going to want to be better. And I'm going to stay still. And that's not what I want. That's not why I came here. That's not why I came to these parts. By these parts, I mean personal growth. To me, self-acceptance meant no more ambition. What I found out later, took me a long time, that it's actually the opposite. All right, we need to take our first quick ad break. And when we get back, I'm going to finish why it's so damn hard. We'll be right back. If you're a woman over 40 dealing with perimenopause, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. Did you know there are so many perimenopause symptoms? Hot flashes and night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness and libido change, weight and body changes, brain fog and memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, joint pain, bone loss, and fracture risk. The experts at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers, no membership fees or hidden costs. If you're uninsured or Medicare is out of network under your plan, they also offer affordable cash payment for services. I know for me, as I'm about to turn 50 in 2025, finding a doctor that specializes in perimenopause and menopause is incredibly important. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Carla only.
Work management platforms. Ugh, endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding, beautiful reports in minutes, custom workflows you can build on your own, easy to use prompt-free AI. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Springfest at Lowe's means can't miss savings for your home and lawn. Right now, buy 3 bags, get 3 free on Miracle-Gro 3/4 cubic foot all-purpose garden soil. Plus, buy 2, get 1 free on select exterior paint and stain via mail-in rebate. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/16, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. While supplies last, selection varies by location. See rebate form for complete list of eligible products. Offer excludes clearance and mist tints and can't be combined with any other offer, promotion, discount, or coupon.
All right, we're back. The next point in why it's so hard to really embrace radical self-acceptance is because we get so used to self-criticism, our inner critic, our negative self-talk really being the norm. This coincides with what I was talking about before the break, and the myth that if we self-accept, if we accept ourselves just as we are, then that means no more ambition. And we also look at our inner critic many times as our motivator. The truth of it is that bullying yourself and pushing yourself that hard and speaking to yourself negatively and beating yourself up might be one of those things where it works until it doesn't. My professional opinion is that it can change your behavior on a dime, because it's essentially shame, and that's what shame does. It can change your behavior on a dime, but the long-term effects are damaging and will actually keep you stuck longer in places. It will stunt your personal growth, because growth does not require self-criticism. It doesn't. It absolutely is not on the list of requirements. Growth requires self-compassion, self-kindness. I want to emphasize how hard this one was for me to believe in the first place, let alone accept it. I had pledged allegiance to a myth, really, but to me it was a fact that in order for me to be better, more successful, I had to be hard on myself. I am Generation X. That is how we grew up. And then I was like, you know what? That doesn't feel good. It really feels like shit. Looking around at everybody's like, is anybody else okay with that? It turns out, fast forward, growth does not require self-criticism. Growth does not require negative self-talk. It requires self-kindness, self-compassion, and self-acceptance. So the last point I want to make around why it's so hard to have self-acceptance and to create that in your life and come from that place is that radical self-acceptance is a rebellion and a system that benefits from your self-doubt. Because at the end of the day, if we're being honest, the economy benefits, patriarchy benefits. In some cases, other people benefit, because if you stay where you're at, stuck, isolating, or self-criticism, or whatever behavior it is, you don't change. And there are people that benefit from that. So if you accept all the parts of yourself, it is likely that you are going to grow. And remember last week when I was talking about leaving people behind, when you grow and evolve and go to deeper depths than other people, there becomes an energy misalignment, an emotional misalignment, and then many times we make the decision to change a relationship or leave the relationship. So there are people that benefit from you not accepting yourself and staying in the place of self-criticism and self-judgment. That one's a little deeper, I know. But have we met? Okay, yes, we've met. Moving on, part 3. Let's talk about your inner child, shall we? Let's talk about your inner kiddo. So for the sake of this podcast episode, I'm going to refer to your inner child as a little girl. And the little girl inside of you may have grown up and felt too sensitive. She may have felt too emotional. She may have felt too loud, too much, just all around uncomfortable, right? I think sometimes we don't realize this until much later, like when we're in midlife. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you had a bad childhood. It does not necessarily mean that you suffered abuse at the hands of anyone or anything like that. I do think that you can still have, generally speaking, have had a decent or pretty great childhood, happy kid. And also, both things can be true. It's not a but, it's an and also felt too sensitive, too loud, too much. I think most of us who grew up as deep feelers, deep thinkers, deeply emotional kids felt at least some sort of discomfort in that, but we couldn't name it at the time. That was my experience and has been the experience of a lot of my clients. But regardless of what your experience was, if you are someone who feels that way, looking back, the little girl inside of you who felt too sensitive, too emotional, too loud, too much, she's still there. She's still there. Her needs didn't disappear just because you got older. You don't grow out of that. Unfortunately, I thought we would. Turns out you don't. In fact, she may have frozen emotionally inside of your subconscious. Childhood wounds have a tendency, damn it, to sneak into present day patterns. So this is where perfectionism shows up, people pleasing, emotional isolation, numbing out, being strong, zero fucks mentality. I'm naming all 14 chapters of how to stop feeling like shit. Control, blaming. Those childhood wounds sneak into present day patterns. Raise your hand if you've ever had a therapist who, when you tell them about a behavior that you're doing, a pattern that you have, they pause and ask you, when do you remember the first time that coming up for you? When do you remember the first time you felt that you needed to engage in that behavior? Or they might ask, what problem, I love this question, what problem are you trying to solve by engaging in people pleasing? I love asking my clients that. What problem are you trying to solve by drinking a bottle and a half of wine every night? That's the question I had to ask myself before I got sober. But your childhood wounds sneak into present day patterns stemming from those behaviors. And so if I could offer you a prompt, if you are a journaler, if you want to just jot this down or remember it for later if you're driving, what did I need as a child that I didn't receive? I also want to side note this. I didn't jot this down in my notes today to talk about, but I feel like it's important and it's tapping me on the shoulder. It's coming up in Write Your Way Through It a little bit. And it's definitely come up in my healing journey, especially over the last few years, is the inner teenager. And I think it's a topic that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot, at least on social media. And it's usually pointing to inner child work. And of course, you're still a child when you're a teenager, but I definitely think there are some differences when we're talking specifically about this work. When we move from childhood into our teenage years, it's an interesting time because we're starting to understand a little bit more the adult world around us, also wanting to engage more. I'm going to use the term like adult themes, but I don't necessarily mean that, as it's known culturally, but just like kind of more being an adult, right? And we don't have the tools for it yet. And I think we also start to notice, even though it might not be conscious, but we feel injustices, whether they're on a global scale or whether they are just personal for us or in our family or in our community. We start to see them and feel them. And many times we feel like we don't have a voice because we can't even name the thing that's happening that's upsetting us, or we don't have the tools yet to do it. We don't have the words to put together, or we didn't grow up in a family where those things were even talked about, let alone processed and tried to solve. I think what happens for a lot of us is that that's the kind of inner child that gets shoved down and put away for later and frozen emotionally. What I have found is a pattern in many of my clients, not all of them, but many of my clients, so I'm going to say it here because this might be you too, is that the emotion that gets shoved down the most is anger. And so when we grow up and we have that inner teenager that's never been allowed a voice, she's still fucking pissed. I don't believe that goes away forever. And that can manifest in other ways. I think for me, part of how it manifested was an autoimmune condition and other physical things. But if this is resonating with you, I invite you to either listen to for the first time or re-listen to, I believe it's episode 3 in the series. It's the one on the 4 holy emotions, because unresolved, even just, I was going to say unresolved anger, but like even anger that isn't allowed a voice, isn't allowed to be processed, anger that just gets shoved down and put away can very easily turn into rage because it festers. What comes along with that is grief and sometimes terror and sometimes shame. And that is why I call those the 4 holy emotions. I was talking to Dr. Fox and I was telling him about how sacred and holy I feel that female rage is for many reasons. And he said, tell me about the difference between anger and rage. And I said, to me, anger is just when you're fucking pissed about something. It's either irritated you or you feel resentful and you just want something to change. And maybe or it's intense frustration as well. Rage has a core of hurt. And when it's expressed, because I really like when on TikTok or Instagram, people edit clips of movies showing female rage. For me, that is therapeutic. For me to be able to see that, act it out, it heals something inside of me when I see that. But when you watch it with most actresses, you can see and feel the undercurrent of hurt. Whereas when it's anger, not so much. So my invitation to you is to think about something that you feel angry about, either currently or historically, and ask yourself, like, at the core of it, am I hurt? Has someone hurt me? Have I hurt myself? And I invite you to ask yourself, could this be really rage that I am feeling or afraid to feel? I saw something on Instagram, I think it was, and the creator said, maybe you're not sad. Maybe you're furious. And this was like a few years ago. I was like, yeah, I think that is the case. And for most women, we have been culturally conditioned, socially conditioned to believe that nobody likes an angry woman. Definitely nobody likes a raging woman. And to feel sad is more acceptable. And so we lock it away. We lock it away. And I don't want that for you. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off track because I will, because that topic is important to me. But what did you need as a child that you didn't receive? What as a teenager did you need that you didn't get? Maybe it was the opportunity to express your voice. And maybe back then you didn't even know what you would say. But if you could, what would that be? So all of this points to reparenting. And I'm going to pop a link in the show notes to an episode I had where I interviewed one of my clients, Chabelle Beautran. She did a whole episode. I interviewed her on reparenting. And actually, did I tell you guys I have a book coming out in December called Live Like You Give a Damn? Anyway, there's a whole chapter in it because I have not talked about it in any of my books yet. And I feel like it's super important. But you can start to reparent yourself in little micro ways, not microwave, microwaves. Soothing yourself, affirming yourself, being present instead of distracted. Those are some small ways. You can even Google how to reparent myself. And I'm sure there's so much information if this is a particular topic that's resonating with you. So I want to wrap up this section, this inner child section, just by saying this one last thing. If you decide to walk into inner child work, and even if you don't, even if you're just thinking about it, I want to make sure I mention that inner child work is so much more about integration than it is blame. It is not helpful if the focus is on the story about who did what to you, when it happened, what the circumstances were. This isn't about that. And that can just lead to blame and more unprocessed feelings, and they just pile all up. It's about healing through honoring the whole story. It's about looking at the impact that it had on you, the behaviors that you adopted in order to keep yourself safe, in order to be accepted by other people in the world. It's about healing that. As children, as adolescents, as teenagers, we never deserved. It's not like you ever deserved, no matter what age you are, you never deserved what happened to you, especially as children, when you don't have the tools or the fully formed brain and difficult things happen to you. You never deserved it. But as an adult, it is now our responsibility to heal from it. Does it suck that it happened? Certain things? 100%. Should some people go to jail for the things that they did to you? 100%. But it's about integration of the story as a whole over blame. Just trying to make sure that I said that. All right. Part 4, my friends, this is about embodied wisdom and learning to trust your body's intelligence. That's what I meant at the beginning of the episode when I said it's about your body. I want to preface this part by saying any kind of somatic work, I was late to that party. I was very late to that party. I always knew about it and obviously knew practitioners that did that. Many of my colleagues do work like this. And I always thought that they had something that I didn't. I was like, what is that you do? I don't get it. So I'm not ready for it. I didn't judge it. I don't think. Maybe I did a little bit because it made me nervous. I just felt like it was something that was difficult for me. And so I stuck to head games. I was like, I'll just intellectualize this because that's where I'm more comfortable. I want to understand it so then I can think about and then hopefully engage in different behaviors and grow from there. And that worked for a while. And then I got to a place where honestly, like my body started to break down. And I was like, I think there's something here. I think there's something to what these people say. I'm falling apart over here. So I started to dive in. And that was only maybe 5-6 years ago where I really started doing the work. But I've always known that our body is the wisest part of ourselves. And most of us are taught to override it. Oh, wait, that's why it was so easy for me to accept. Like, I'm just going to stay in my head and intellectualize personal growth. It's fine. It's fine. Because that's what we were taught, that it can be spooky if we try to tap in too much to our bodies. Like that's for witches, even though I always knew. I'm like, I kind of am. All right. So somatic signals. I'm pretty sure that all of you know the difference between, even if I gave you the simple exercise of, okay, think of the food that you hate the most versus the food that you love the most. If someone offered you the food that you hate the most and you said no, you would know what that feels like, that no, versus the yes of when someone offers you your favorite food. This could be even like physical touch. You know what a yes feels like when someone touches you the way that you like to be touched, when you feel safe, and what it feels like when it's a no. So it starts with even just like, let's just start there. Learning to trust your body's intelligence from there. Like that's simple explanation. Radical self-acceptance starts with rebuilding the trust between your mind, your body, and your nervous system. Because that's really what this is about. I am also a little bit late to this party that when we're talking about any kind of somatic work or somatic signals, whatever, from our body, it is our nervous system. That's what we're really talking about. Our nervous system drives the bus. It drives our behaviors many times. So it's rebuilding that trust. And ways that our trust has been broken, I didn't like learning about this, but all of the times that we didn't slow down when our body was telling us to, when our body was asking us to, when our body was asking us to rest and we didn't, when our body was asking for food and we said no. And for the longest time in my 20s, that was my biggest symptom of just really terrible coping mechanisms and not listening to my body when it asked me to stop running so many miles, or not listening when it asked for more calories. I think that can be a common experience. Radical self-acceptance lives in our physical experiences as well as our emotional ones and our mental ones. That comes from even the practices of accepting that rest is not just a normal part of being human and recovering as a human, but that it is absolutely necessary to thrive. Like we have to. Like we've been taught that is lazy. I cannot tell you how many times when I go through, there's a particular exercise that I take clients through, and I've talked about it in a couple classes. I've even talked about it in, I think it was How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, around our unwanted identities, because these are our triggers. So many people say lazy, that they don't want to be perceived by other people as lazy. It crosses generations, but like I can speak as a representative of Generation X. Like we were labeled as part of the zeitgeist, like the lazy generation, the slacker generation. So like no wonder we think that resting is for wimps. You know, it's like we have those kind of like mantras. Radical self-acceptance can start by exercises like that, listening to your body. I was a runner for years, many, many years, and I did my last triathlon in 2018. And after that, I had to admit to myself and other people, you know what? You know what my hips and my knees and my ankles are asking me? They're not asking me to strength train more so I can have an easier time running. They're not asking me for more stretching so I can have an easier time running. They're asking me to stop. My body's asking me to just walk instead of run. I had pounded the pavement for enough years. I had run enough miles. I was done. So I retired. I may go back eventually, probably not. But that's an example of radical self-acceptance by listening to body cues that we're not used to doing. It can also look like simple body-based practices. Any of you that do yoga, bravo. Breath work, any kind of grounding, going outside, the quote, touching grass, bare feet on grass if it's weather permitting, putting your hands on your heart, even putting your hands on whatever part of your body is feeling called to do so. These are simple baby steps of somatic-based practices, because this is where safety and self-trust really start to land. I do not want to tell you that's not enough. Those simple steps. If you have been operating from a place of opposite, of not listening to your body, of pushing yourself to the brink of complete exhaustion, et cetera, starting here, starting small is like learning vocabulary when you're learning a new language. Start small. You are not going to just jump in and learn how to conjugate verbs and learn tricky sentence structure of this new language. You're going to start small with vocabulary. That's what this looks like. All right, we're going to take our last ad break. And when we get back, I'm going to talk about how to actually practice radical self-acceptance. I know I've given you some tips and tools, but I'm going to give you some more. So we'll be right back.
Uh-oh, the last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Go further with the American Express Business Gold Card. Earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels when you book through AmexTravel.com. Whether your destination is a business conference or a client meeting, your purchases will help you earn more points for future trips. Experience more on your travels with Amex Business Gold. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
And we're back. All right. So we've been through it. Part 1 was what the hell is radical self-acceptance. I explained it, why it's so hard, the wisdom of your inner child. And we talked about before the break, embodied wisdom, learning to trust your body's intelligence. Part 5, this last part, is about how to actually practice radical self-acceptance. What does it look like in motion? So it can start with, I'm going to talk to you about 4 different practices. I think there's 4. Shifting your inner dialogue. Guess what? A lot of self-acceptance is about shifting the way that you speak to yourself, how kind you are, how compassionate you are versus how much you beat yourself up, how hard you are on yourself, how much you criticize yourself. If you have been following my work for a long time, you know that back in the 2010, that's how long I've been doing this, you guys. When I first started, I've been coaching since about 2007, really laid everything down. 2010, that's when I launched yourkickasslife.com and really came online. I started out mostly only talking about the inner critic, negative self-talk, how to change that. And I say all that because my point is that this is how long I've been working on that particular topic, how I speak to myself. And I also have the luxury of doing it for a living. So I was immersed in that work. And I can tell you with full confidence that has moved the needle so much in how I feel about myself, how I feel in general, how I show up in my relationships, my success in so many areas of my life. It's dramatically changed me. So when people ask me, I say this all the time, when people ask me, if you could just pick one personal growth topic or tool, what would it be? And I tell them, I can't answer that because it's like choosing between my children. So I'm going to choose two because I have two kids. One is negative self-talk and the other one is values. Because when you know your values and what they look like, that can set up your map for everything. Negative self-talk, shifting the inner dialogue. Notice your tone. Notice the things that you're saying to yourself and notice when. The key to this, and Andrea, do not go on a 25-minute tangent about this, so I'm going to whip through. By the way, there's an audio program called Getting Damn Good at Life that I did with Sounds True a couple years ago. I'll drop the link in there. It is all of my work on negative self-talk. It's really great. I highly recommend it. So we'll drop the link in there. First step, notice. Because you can't tame what you can't name. You got to notice. You got to notice the areas of your life when it comes up the most. Notice your triggers. Get curious about it instead of beating yourself up for beating yourself up. Get curious. Just accept, like, oh, hey, there I am again. Look at what I do. And then you're going to focus on neutrality, just changing those specific thoughts. If you are someone that has them, some people don't. Some people it's just a feeling. Some people don't have a constant inner dialogue, constant ticker tape of thoughts. What is that like? Anyway, so once you figure out and can name quickly the places where you beat yourself up, like when you can name it in real time, that is when the learning how to course correct happens. And that's really what Getting Damn Good at Life is about, walking you through that. Ooh, that is such a big part of it, your inner dialogue. The next strategy is practicing safety with yourself. This is really the next step and a byproduct of working on your negative self-talk. Because when you can feel safe with yourself, you feel safer making your own decisions. And that consistent self-compassion, that consistent self-kindness rewires self-trust. That's an amazing byproduct that happens when you practice radical self-acceptance in that way, when you start practicing safety with yourself. I have also found this has come along with doing more somatic practices and somatic work. Rituals for self-connection, for connecting with yourself, can be incredibly helpful and are part of the beginning phases and really great first steps in terms of practicing radical self-acceptance. So this is things like journaling, 100% journaling. Again, write your way through it is my journaling program. I will reopen registration for that, I think in the fall, maybe late summer, link in show notes. Journaling, mirror work. I haven't done a ton of mirror work up until recently. And now my mirror work looks like whenever I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and feel like I need a pep talk. And it's usually like when I have fallen down, I will do mirror work. And I basically just do that. I give myself a pep talk. Sometimes it feels ridiculous. Most of the times I'm used to it now, but it's things like, girl, you know how to do this. You know how to get up after this fall. You are Andrea motherfucking Owen. Do not forget that. Like mine, it's very specific in how I talk to myself, where I am stern, but it is completely rooted in love and a knowing. It's a knowing. So mine is like, if I had a best friend or a sister who was like, no, you didn't just forget who you were. Let me remind you. Like that's mine. And that works for me 100%. That feels like love. Maybe it's just because how I was raised. I don't know. Maybe to other people it would sound toxic. But for me, it's like the thing that makes me remember who I am and helps me to get back up and helps me to start moving in a positive trajectory again. So mirror work, try it. It's going to feel awkward at first. And also another ritual for self-connection might be what I call like intuitive check-ins. So that means, because goddamn, we can overthink, right? Who's with me? Raise your hand if you're an overthinker. Who? We ruminate, we overthink. I ask my clients a lot, especially when they specifically ask me for advice about something. I will stop and say, what does your gut say? And always, well, I was going to say always, but I would say at least 99% of the time, they have an answer. There are the few where we need to dig a little bit deeper. I ask more questions, but And it depends. Sometimes an answer comes right out of their mouth, and sometimes they have to think about it for a little while and like check in with their body and check in, and they'll have an answer. But that's what an intuitive check-in looks like. It's just, what is my body telling me right now? And if you have no idea, then that is your clue to maybe do some simple body-based practices that I was talking about before the break. Breath work, grounding, putting your hand on your heart, going for walks in nature. And when you go for walks in nature, maybe don't have a podcast in your ears, but maybe just some music, and make it a point to look at nature or listen to your breath or listen to the other sounds around you, birds, whatever. That can help you with intuitive check-ins. That was number 3, the rituals for self-connection. 4th thing, permission slips for your healing. I'm a lover of permission slips. Maybe it's because they remind me of my own childhood. I mean, they still do permission slips, but I also like anything that we write with our hands. I am all for digital things and apps and things like that, but anytime you can journal, like pen to paper or permission slips for your healing, I can be messy and still lovable. I love and accept all the parts of myself. I give myself permission to accept all of the versions of myself that I may not exactly be proud of, but they are a part of me. I give myself permission to rest, to be soft, to have compassion for myself. Writing those out can be intentions that you set. Words are powerful. Words are spells. I'm just going to say it. Words are spells. What we say out loud, what we write down, what we say to ourselves matters so much. And I might be biased because I'm a writer, but I don't think I am. Words matter. Write yourself a permission slip. And the last thing I want to say in this part about practicing radical self-acceptance is that it's about choosing yourself over and over with tenderness. Choosing yourself over and over with tenderness. When you live and grow up in a culture that tells you that to do that will make you weak, will make you not a winner, will certainly not make you successful. But I promise you, it actually puts you at an advantage when you choose yourself over and over with tenderness, because you heal faster, easier, better, and it just fucking feels better. It feels better so much. And I really want to point you back to the self-trust episode, especially if this episode is resonating with you a lot and you haven't listened to that one. It was the first one in the series, lesson 1 on self-abandonment and self-trust. And I hope you have loved this. And truly, I guess at the end of the day, I could have summed this up and this episode would have been a lot shorter by saying that self-acceptance is really about accepting all of the messy parts of you that you have guilt about, that you have shame about. These are your shadow sides. And the reason I think it's so important for me to talk about as a person who teaches and facilitates empowerment, personal growth, personal development, is that if you are working on being a better person, there are definitely narratives that you have, stories that you have, parts of yourself that you want to change or that you're not very proud of, maybe that you regret. Those are the parts that if you reject them, if you beat yourself up for them, if you push them away from a place of shame, regret, denial, embarrassment, they don't go anywhere. They don't. In fact, they stick around and they fester. I always say, you can't bury your feelings alive and hope that they'll die. You can't bury the old versions of yourself that you're ashamed of and expect them to die. They won't. They come up like fucking zombies. And you all know how I feel about zombies. No. We need to accept those parts of ourselves, eventually love those parts of ourselves. By the way, that's a big topic that's come up with Dr. Fox and I, and something we're going to talk about when he comes on in a few weeks now. We have it on the schedule to sit down and record together. He's going to come on a conversation about shit that matters with unqualified people. We're going to talk about the first 7 or 8 months of our relationship and what that's looked like. And one of the topics is going to be about this, is about the shadow parts of ourselves and our behaviors and patterns that we're not proud of, that still try to rear their ugly head in this new relationship, that we talk about early on instead of just waiting for it to come up in an inopportune moment in the relationship and then dance around it and argue or whatever. We're like, do you want to show me your, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And these are some of the many hard conversations that he and I have had. And I think it's important to talk about these in relationships too. Anyway, one of my friends is like, you can't have a conversation without mentioning Dr. Fox. It's also not his real name. You'll find out his real name too. And I'm like, I know, I'm smitten over here. I'm deeply, deeply in love. So your worth has never been up for debate. You don't need to hustle to prove it. Self-acceptance is the way. My invitation to you is try one practice from this podcast episode this week and let it be enough. And of course, download the worksheet, print out the worksheet, AndreaOwen.com/670. There are questions that directly point to the things that I talked about here, and they are journaling prompts. Questions for you to write, they're not like yes or no answers. So that will be helpful if you decide to do that. I would love for you to DM me your biggest takeaway from this episode, especially anything from your inner child or what your body had to say, or maybe even like the myth of how you feel, self-acceptance, how you've always felt about what that might look like and why you've been avoiding it. And I just want to remind you that you are not alone in this. I'm walking this too. This has been one that's a lifelong journey for me. All of these 10 life lessons are, but I am also cheering you on so much. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.